There's growing evidence that the inequality between rich and poor people's emissions within countries now outweighs disparities between countries. In other words, high emitters have more in common across international boundaries than they did 30 years ago, no matter where they call home. The World Inequality Lab drew on a range of data, from diet to car ownership, stock market investment and global trade, to estimate carbon output. The top 10% of polluters overlap with the world's wealthiest 10%, anyone who earns more than $38,000 a year. The richest 1%, more than 60 million people earning over $109,000 a year, are by far the fastest growing source of emissions. Globally, the top 1%, located all over the world, with 37% in the US and more than 4.5% in Brazil and China, actually emit about 70 times as much carbon as the bottom 50%. So, why do the rich and poor pollute differently? As people get richer, diets tend to diversify and meat consumption rises. The average American in 2019 ate 53 pounds of beef, the most carbon-intensive meat. And growing middle classes in developing countries, from China to South Africa, are eating more meat than ever. Far higher up the income distribution, emissions increase exponentially. The single most polluting asset, the super yacht, saw a 77% surge in sales last year. And an 11-minute ride into space is responsible for more carbon per passenger than the lifetime emissions of any one of the world's poorest billion people. 1/10 of all flights departing from France in 2019 were on private aircraft. In just 4 hours, those individually owned planes generate as much carbon dioxide as the average person in the European Union emits all year. 4/5 of the people on the planet never get on an airplane in their entire lifetime. The top 1% of emitters are responsible for 21% of the emissions growth since 1990, while the WIL's data shows runaway emissions from a class of individuals, the top 0.001%, whose responsibility is so great that their decisions can have the same climate impact as nationwide policy interventions. Owning a car, meanwhile, is one of the fastest ways to enlarge an individual's carbon footprint. SUVs were the largest contributor, after power, to the increase in global carbon emissions from 2010 to 2018. When it comes to energy consumption, the difference can be even more stark. An average person in Nigeria uses about half as much electricity in a year as a US high-definition television. The huge gap between high and low emitters suggests that the current nation-centered approach to cutting carbon needs to be rethought. As consumers and investors, the choices of the wealthy can have an outsized impact, especially on transport and housing. Rich people need to use the full extent of their influence if change is to happen. As role models, as corporate executives or board members, and as citizens engaging with policy reforms.